So the second part of this video I am going to do through another app that doesn't require Zoom, which is still trying to connect in the background. So let's kill Zoom and come back to what we're talking about. A little change in tone as well that has been noticed. Because when the internet goes down, it's humbling. And I'm thinking, why am I not outside? Which is a great question because it's a beautiful day outside. Okay, so the other thing that happened around this time is having come through. Yeah, I'm not big on Tony Robbins. You're going to hear me say this, but one of the, and that's not a criticism. Um, I'm not very familiar with Tony Robbins' work, or have not read the books written by Tony Robbins. But this one article is very interesting, and a lot of times it's about the sequence of activities and the right set of ingredients within that sequence in the first place. And so, story, strategy, state change. If you Google that word, one of the first links that you see is a link to Tony Robbins' blog post titled The 3 Steps to a Breakthrough. And you really need to tell yourself the story that you want to become or live, or a struggle you want to overcome. You must imagine that reality before you get there, right? So I'm not going to do an exhaustive talk on this topic, but telling yourself the right story, trying different strategies, when you work on those two areas, you get to a state change. And that state change, in my opinion, can put you on a path towards an upward spiral. The alternative is to let life pass you by. Life happen to you, whereby you can try different things, take action, try the different frameworks, some of which I've shared with you, in order for you to move the needle. And this is why I want to take a break from when I was talking about deep work and talk about this blog post by Tony Robbins, which you should use, because that's exactly what I was doing while I was in that deep work framework, when I was deploying deep work. Deep work itself was a strategy, if you think about it, because it's about controlling the story, trying different strategies in order to get to that state change. So I would visualize that I have accomplished my goal and I'm feeling ecstatic having done so. And every day I would visualize and I would do deep work. I would go to a place where I could focus, undistracted, and hit the goal that was in front of me. And that was one of the couple of goals, because I was working on a startup and I was working on hitting that goal. And so this is my, if I may, this is what I would like to share with you. That deep work is a strategy that can be extremely pivotal for you to help you get to the milestone that you need to get to, or milestones, because you're not just gonna hit one milestone and that's it. You're gonna this is gonna be an ongoing thing for life. There's two other things I want to share here. One is that the quality of deep work may suffer if you are not disciplined towards continually deploying what you've learned. So it would be useful to have an accountability partner. That's one. The other thing I've learned is there's a couple of things. There's a corollary to a document that I created. I'm going to talk about that later, possibly towards the end. But the other thing is that you need to bake relaxation and leisure into your day-to-day routine. And the reason for that is manifold, but primarily one in random order, one of productivity. So if you're trying to be, if not trying to be, but you want to be more productive, you don't want to have the Parkinson's law, not the disease. Parkinson's law states, the way I understand it, that if you give yourself 4 hours to do a task, then you're going to try and fill up those 4 hours with that work, or just work in quotation marks. Whereas in reality, you could do a really good job completing that task within an hour maximum. So if I did my math right, you just took that much more time. When in reality, you could have done the same thing. What did I say? 1 hour versus 4 hours. So that in 1/4 the amount of time, you could have done the same work in a quality sense. So yeah, just to recap, have an accountability partner so that your work doesn't languish and you don't go back to your old ways of doing things. Bake relaxation into your day-to-day routine. And Newport talks about this in detail with regards to how you should be taking breaks. What I do is I create an app on my phone. Sorry, my computer. This one is called Be Focused Pro. This is the pro version. You can get the free version too. And I set the dial back and try different variations. But right now I need to take a break. Not just for the mind, but also for the body. Because I need to stretch because of my back issues. So for me, it's physiology and psychology both. But every 25 minutes, maximum 40 minutes, you should be walking away from your desk, even if it's a 2 to 5 minute break. Because there have been studies done on this, and this is not medical advice again, not a clinical advice, but your productivity is better when you do a reset. And after a successive number of these cycles, you got to take a longer break. So bottom line, build relaxation into your day-to-day routine. And when you have relaxation, please don't go on your phone and pick up Instagram or some wasteful activity that is going to chip your focus away. You can pick up your phone and call a friend just to check on them, not gossip. You can play with your dog if you have one, or any other pet. You can take a quick walk outside, or just go outside and breathe some fresh air. You can do some push-ups. I think you get the point. Should be some healthy activity, or you could even call it a healthy distraction. Something that shifts your focus for a couple of minutes so that you can come back a little bit more rejuvenated. You could take a power nap, or you could just lie flat on the floor in hopefully a clean place and a safe place, and just close your eyes, or you can do a breathing exercise, or you can mix and match. So that's another thing that comes to my mind. Leisure by itself is a different category. Based on all of my experiences, there should be a leisurely activity or more scheduled, or maybe you just want to take it in an unstructured manner. But it should be built into your day-to-day routine. Because I read this in Ryan Holiday's book, The Lives of Stoics. And one of the things Holiday says is that if leisure is not built into our routine, then it increases the probability that we may crave that actual thing through means that could be deemed as non-virtuous. Now, I'm not talking about you or me, but that is Ryan Holiday's book. And I think there's an angle to procrastination, though. Because if you don't have leisure built into your day-to-day routine, then it may increase the probability that that individual starts engaging in procrastination. So these are a couple of kind of things that come to me with regards to the accountability partner, making relaxation into your day-to-day routine, and the importance of conducting leisurely activities. Let's move on. The next book that I'd like to highlight, because again, just to recap, this is part 2 of the video titled Some Resources for Entrepreneurs and Change Makers. And so with regards to now, Up until now, I've been focused on kind of like talking about the mindset aspect and the story and the strategy and the state change aspect and the framework with regards to deep work and the importance of building relaxation and leisure in your day-to-day routine. Now we're going to shift gears and talk a little bit about the entrepreneurial mechanics. And one of the books, this is more again kind of like a book that you can read in a finite amount of time, minimum of 2 days. You could read it in a day if you want, if you want to dedicate the whole day towards it. Maximum, I think you could wrap it up in a week, maybe a week and a half, maybe part time. Like it's not a thick read. So the central premise of the lean startup is, in my opinion, it's been a decade since I read this book, but the central premise of the lean startup is the framework that is referred to as the build, measure, learn cycle. And to quote from one of Eric Ries's quote is, and the whole lean startup movement, which is what the title of the book is just a startup. So lean startup movement is focused on like a big driver or outcome that comes out of the lean movement is something called the MVP, or the minimum viable product. And the minimum viable product can be explained with one of the quotes from Eric Ries, and like I was saying, and it goes something like, if you have not published or pushed your MVP and it makes you, sorry, let me rephrase. It's something like, if your minimum viable product does not embarrass you upon release, then you have launched too late. Okay? So that's the, like, you can wrap your mind around with like when you should be launching with regards to your minimum viable product. And I think Reid Hoffman said this, and the quote goes something along the lines of, an entrepreneur is somebody who jumps off a cliff and invents a parachute on the way down. And so the lean startup methodology is primarily focused upon the framework that Ries categorizes as the build, measure, learn cycle. And the central premise of the build, measure, learn cycle is to first, I think, it would be to get out of the building and have an understanding. My internet's not working, so I cannot bring up that article from Steve Blank. But I have, that's going to be the next topic anyway, so I'll talk about that. But that is the framework, and as it relates to the lean startup, you build something like bare bones, but it doesn't mean it's sloppy. It should have that utility that you are trying to go after. So I don't know what's a good example of a minimum viable product, but actually one really good example that comes to my mind is through the book called Sprint by Jake Knapp and John Zeratsky. And the use case of Savvy Oak Robotics from the context of the minimum viable product they built is a great example, in my opinion, in my humble opinion. So what the team at Savvy Oak Robotics did was they wanted to create a concierge robot that helps get utensils and products to customers in a hotel chain or hotels in general. Because I don't know the exact like deep details of this, but you can only have so many orderlies or people working in a hotel. So if 5 people want a toothbrush at the same time, it may take upwards of half an hour to deliver the product to those individuals. And that's a small example. So think about bigger chains like at Vegas or somewhere else, at like a Disney resort or something like that. So So that's why they created this robot that could deliver towels, toothbrushes, toothpaste, shaving stuff, cream and soap and whatnot to customers. Now, before they created the robot, what the team did at Savvy Robotics was they tested the utility. Going back to the lean startup. So the way they built their minimum viable product is by sticking an iPad on top of a cardboard box and mimicking the set of behaviors that an actual robot would perform. And so they got the permission to do this with a hotel chain. I don't know which hotel, but so a call comes into the front desk and somebody goes, I need a toothbrush. Could you please send one up to my room? So after approval from the managers, they went up to the room and knocked on the door. And when the customer opened the door, there was a cardboard box with an iPad on top. I don't know what it was, like a towel or toothbrush. I think it was a towel, right? And there was a cavity cut inside that cardboard box with the towel placed in the belly of that like cardboard based robot or something, that, you know, mimicking the function of a robot. So basically, having spent almost zero money, the team was able to validate the utility of that innovation, of that design. And that, to me, from my limited vantage point, humble vantage point, is a great example of a minimum viable product. It is a phenomenal way of building, measuring, learning. So there are other things that Ries also talks about. Eric Ries was one of Steve Blank's student. So Steve Blank is big on, obviously Steve Blank teaches about customer discovery and customer validation, and then company building, and you know there's a fourth step. But the thing that helps you get from discovery to validation and eventually to company building is a pivot. So I'll talk about that in a moment, but I think this is like a summary of the lean startup. It works hand in hand with the teachings of Steve Blank and also the business model canvas, which I'm going to talk about next. But I'm hoping that everything I'm sharing with you with regards to the mindset, the deep work, the different frameworks, the story, strategy, state change, and now the actual books on entrepreneurship, that by investing in these, in your education, hopefully anyone who's watching this, I can save you a lot of your precious money. And that could be money that you can invest towards actually building your company versus making somebody else rich. Okay, so let's move on to the Startup Owner's Manual. And I've already spoken a little bit about this, but I think I've mentioned a little bit about this in the part 1 of this video. And this is again the Startup Owner's Manual with the subtitle, The Step-by-Step Guide for Building a Great Company, is a book that's written by Steve Blank and Bob Dorff. And these are two individuals who know a fair bit about entrepreneurship. I honestly have not read enough of this book to be able to do a justice about it with regards to a book review. And okay, so there are two books that I'm going to talk about that I've not read cover to cover. And this happens to be one of them. Okay? But that being said, this is a thick read. There are at least 600 pages in this book. Okay? Let me actually double check how many pages there are. Yeah, there's about 560 plus pages. But beyond page 469, there's a series of checklists. So the checklists are there for you to conduct activities of a certain nature. overall, the book is broken down into different sections, focusing on both the customer discovery aspect and the customer validation aspect. So, Steve Blank, if you listen to him, is big on getting out of the building. That's a term that Steve Blank speaks about way before COVID, almost decades ago, in fact. And when we say, when Steve Blank would say, get out of the building, in a post-COVID world, that means phone and Zoom calls. Okay? I'm just collecting my thoughts. But for all intensive purposes, if you are trying, a startup, according to Steve Blank, is a faith-based endeavor, and you need to get to a fact-finding mission. You need to turn a faith-based endeavor because you have an idea and you have a certain way of looking at the world, and maybe you have a unique insight. And this is still a non-scientific phenomenon. And so the way you turn it into a step-by-step process that is replicable with customers coming in and you solving a problem is by turning your startup into a fact-finding mission. And you do that by conducting experiments. But the very first set of things you got to do is to get out of the building, like Steve Blank would say. Again, you can do this on phone and Zoom in a post-COVID world. But only by getting out of the building do you begin to have an understanding and an appreciation of the kind of problems that exist. And typically what happens is it's almost never that an entrepreneur would launch a product or service and is going to be materialized in the real world exactly that the way that the entrepreneur envisioned. That almost never happens. Almost 0%. What happens is, as the entrepreneur or change maker gets out of the building and they have discussions with others, they realize that they can modify their product or service in order to be able to solve that problem so that it's a win-win for the customer and for the company. That the company mobilizes its teams and its collective and individual energies in order to be able to solve the problem, and the customer is happy because their problem gets solved in the first place, so that they can go back and focus on the things that really matter to them, whatever they may be. And so this is why it is so crucial and pivotal to get out of the building. And this is not an exhaustive review of the Startup Owner's Manual, but I'm sharing with you also based on my almost 8 years as an experience as an entrepreneur, 8 years of experience as an entrepreneur. One of the mistakes a lot of entrepreneurs make is they don't talk to enough customers. And we fall in love with our idea, and that is the death of startups. Because if you're not changing your product, your service, your offering, and you're not working towards getting sales or generating sales cycles, then you're dying. And that is the harsh truth of entrepreneurship. I would think this is not a scientific or evidence-based, this is not a comment based on evidence, but I would think that the majority of the startups die because they don't focus on sales and they don't focus on customer generation or customer discovery or validation. And because they don't, they lull or they delude themselves into thinking that there is a lot of work happening, things are getting done, they're clearing off a lot of tasks, they're planning, they're branding, and all these things are happening. All these things by themselves are not bad, but the thing is, if you're not getting out of the building and talking to customers, then you are dying. Because if you don't have sales and if you're not raising capital, then that thing is not a business. And that is a reminder for myself too. Okay, so again, this is not going to be an exhaustive review, but this is one of the books that you should buy and read. But because this is a reference book, that means you don't read this book in one shot. You read this book as a reference material. So depending on which stage of your development you're at, you read the book and you apply. And you read the book and you apply. And you look at the checklist in the back and you apply. I think you get the point. This book is also available in the Kindle format. So just search for the Startup Owner's Manual, Kindle edition, and you will get to it. Here we go. Okay? 80, but you get the point. Okay? Also, spend time on the website of Mr. Steve Blank. And this is not the only book he's written. So take a look at some of his other books. I think two of his most famous books are The 4 Steps to the Epiphany and The Startup Owner's Manual. I have both the books, but I have not read them cover to cover. Alrighty, there may be other books that Mr. Steve Blanks have written. The website itself is also a treasure trove of resources. A lot of blog posts in general, going back to the homepage, but also tools, a whole bunch of tools for different reasons, information on fundraising, other books, slides and videos. You get the point. You can also sign up for the subscription. Okay, so don't spend money, please. Thousands of dollars listening to others when what they are most likely doing is copying that stuff from people like Steve Blank and Eric Ries and others, repackaging it and selling it for big bucks. Just buy the books or go to the library and read the books. Please save your money. Don't waste your money. Okay? Okay, let's move on. The next book that I'm going to talk about is The Business Model Generation. A Handbook for Visionaries, Game Changers, and Challengers. It's a book primarily written by an individual named by Alexander Osterwalder and also Yves Pignor. I don't think I'm doing justice saying Yves' name, but it's right here. So the business model canvas looks something like this. These are Creative Commons images, so I can share them. I should have brought up a particular image. And I'm not going to do an exhaustive link here because I'm still learning about this myself. But you have at least 9 different areas in a traditional business model canvas. There's also something known as a lean canvas and mission canvas. So depending on the kind of activity you're on, there would be a different kind of business model canvas. And the 9 areas are divided into different sections. And the different sections work along with each other. So don't ask me, I don't know how I gotta refresh my memory. But that is what a business model canvas looks like. I think there's something to this image. You mean one section of the business model canvas focuses on the product and the other focuses on the market. And as an entrepreneur, you do activities in you got to have a hold of 3 things. Your psychology, you got to find the product market fit, and you got to be an inventor and an entrepreneur. That comes from Ben Horowitz, by the way, one of his talks. So on the topic of product market fit, which means that you need to go again and turn your faith-based endeavor, not in a religious sense necessarily, into a fact-finding mission. And as you're trying to do this fact-finding mission, one of the tools that you're going to use in order to be able to do that is the business model canvas. Right? So we spoke about mindset, different methodologies, frameworks, and then we got into Entrepreneurship 101, starting with Eric Ries, then Steve Blank, and now we're talking Alexander Osterwalder's business model canvas. The business model canvas is explained in the book, The Business Model Generation. And if you're like me, then don't feel bad that after having spent a couple of hours in sprints, you still don't understand how the business model works. It takes time. Okay? So you got to get your hands dirty and get right into it. If you're like me, you prefer like a paper-based model, get one of those postcards from, in Canada we have the dollar store. I don't know, like in US or other parts of the world you have Target or maybe just Walmart. And get those postcards that you're going to put up on the wall. Get some sticky notes, get some Sharpies, get some Scotch tape, and go to work. I guess if you have sticky notes, you don't need Scotch tape. Well, you're going to need Scotch tape to stick that thing on the wall in the first place. But I'm sure there are now apps and things like Miro and Canva. And if you wanted to, you could have I have both. I have a paper-based version of this, which you're probably going to see on the back of the wall in some of the other content I've created. But I also have a version of the business model canvas in Miro. And so the book that you see up on the screen is the book that explains how the business model works. Okay? That's the short and sweet summary. I won't do an exhaustive thing here. I think I've spoken enough about this one. Let's move on. So you can find a template for the business model canvas. Just do a Google search and go from there. So in addition to the book, there's also YouTube videos and possibly other blog posts and resources that you can absorb in order to understand how the business model canvas really works. But the book itself is the best resource. So when you start the canvas, you look at the book, and the first couple of times I was doing it over the years and have been doing it, I always find myself going back to the book and asking myself, what is a resource again? Sorry, what's a channel again? What's a key resource? And what's the difference between the two? Like, that's just one of the many examples of the kind of questions you ask yourself, right? And then you kind of find yourself going back and looking at, what's a partner again? You know, how is it different from customer relationships? So there are basically different parts to the business model canvas. And so that's what's going on. This doesn't look right, by the way. These are not the actual terms. Let me see if I can find one. This one looks, yeah, this is what a business model canvas actually looks like. Key partners, key activities, key resources, value prop, customer relationships. I don't know, it says something else here. I can barely read it. I think they've modified it. Oh, this is the non-profit business model canvas. That's why it's different. So the resource from Alexander Osterwalder is the original resource, but like I said, there is a twist to the business model canvas now with the lean canvas by Ash Moria, and then other kind of canvases that you have emerged, like a mission canvas or nonprofit canvas. So yeah, read and apply, read and apply, read and apply. Okay. There are other entrepreneur-specific books. There's a book called How to Talk to Humans, which used to sell on the Kindle for $1. Now it's probably $5 or something like that. But it's a short read, but it's useful. It is useful. Because if you have, because my background is mostly on a corporate side of things, and I kind of grew up working at companies, small and big and medium size. So I'm kind of accustomed to just walking over to somebody's cubicle and striking a conversation, or vice versa, and or if I need something to go and go to the right department and or asking around and starting requesting that a ticket be created so that work gets done. When you're an entrepreneur, you need to learn to talk to people from different backgrounds. And so there are books and resources on that you should read, like How to Talk to Humans, or The Mom Test by Rob Fitzpatrick. I haven't finished reading The Mom Test by Rob Fitzpatrick, but it's an important read because excuse me, because the kind of questions you ask will determine the the course of your startup. Because if you ask your customers the wrong questions, like if you go up to every single customer and ask them, would you buy my product? Would you buy my product? What do you think is right with my product? What do you think is not working with my product? Those could be quite bad for you. It's not just that how you're asking it, it's like what you're asking in the first place. So you're setting a precedent with each and every one of those customers whereby your focus is very narrow and very product focused, very product centered. Whereby what you should really try to do is try to understand what are the pain points your customers are experiencing. Because as you meditate on those set of problems and issues that are being highlighted, you can and possibly should look into modifying your product or service in order to solve the problems of your customer or customers. So these are the kind of things they talk about in the book that is not on your screen, but I'm talking about it. But I won't do an exhaustive list here. And at this point, I'm going to move to the last of the books in the series for today. And if you are going to spend, I don't know if this is the official from, it says Dale Carnegie on the website here. Man, if this book is actually available for 40 cents, this is the best 39 cents you are going to spend in your entire lifetime, period. And I've recommended this book hundreds, thousands of times by now, possibly. And by far, I don't have to speak much about this because this book was written in the 1930s, in around the time when the Great Depression was at its peak. So Dale Carnegie, I think his background was in psych or psychology, and Carnegie would study people, and he would study what makes them go and tick, and what makes them want to put in 1000% effort on a consistent basis. Going back to exactly the growth mindset we started talking about, and so then he started a public speaking club, if memory serves me correct. But one of the things he was realizing it that as people wanted to get into public speaking, another one of the things a lot of people were interested in was personal development. And so I could be wrong when it comes to the sequence of these events, or I could be wrong about this period, not intentional. But then what Carnegie did was he started synthesizing the data he had been collecting based on his interviews over many years. And that was the research culminated in the form of this book, which again was released in the 30s. And for 90 plus years, 90 plus years, this book has been selling for almost a century. And so if that is not a testament to how effective this book is, then I don't know what is. And this has been by far one of the best books I have read in my life. It's in my hands right now, and I just cannot recommend this book enough. I think there's 4 parts to this book. Okay? And the 4 parts, well, before I get into the parts, what I really like about it is as you start reading the book, there's a history and a story behind how the book was formed. So don't listen to me, go and pick up the book and start reading. The second thing that I like about this book is that it tells you how to read the book in the first place, with very specific targeted information, with the kind of tools that you should have in your hand as you are reading the book. A pencil, a pen, and a highlighter or two. And notes So paper to take notes on, or however you take notes. Then it tells you read the book, like it gives you step-by-step instructions. Don't read the whole book in a day. Read and apply, read and apply, read and apply, right? So that's the start of the book. And with regards to the four parts of the book are: part 1, fundamental techniques in handling people. And there's 3 chapters that expand on that. Part 2, 6 ways to make people like you. And there are 6 specific chapters on how to do that. Part 3 is how to win people to your way of thinking. And there are 12 chapters on how to do that. And part 4 is to be a leader and how to change people without giving offense or arousing sentiment. And there are 9 chapters to that effect. Then the book closes with some closing notes, the courses that may be available, because the foundation is still going strong. There's the Dale Carnegie Foundation that still conducts courses after 9 years, 9-0, something like that. 85, 90 years this thing has been in existence. There's other things towards the end of the book, like personal techniques, which I cannot recall right now because it's been a couple of years since I read this book. But you're definitely going to need a highlighter, and you're definitely going to need a pen, because you will be taking notes and highlighting stuff that you're going to come back to over and over again. Amazing read, cannot recommend it enough. Now, the purpose of this book, this video again, is to share resources, just to come back, with entrepreneurs and change makers. I should put a subtext there saying, so that you can save money, and so that you don't waste your money, okay? And there is content that I've made. I don't have a list, like sequential list of what the content is. But one resource that I really want to highlight and can be quite useful is startupschool.org. And you take a look at my video-based review of Startup School, and this 19 minutes I think would be well served, with a caveat, or with a distinction, with a note that the actual layout of the website we have changed since the time I created that review. But once you log in, and signing up is free, this whole resource is free the way I understand it, then once you will see a screen like this. So the areas you want to spend time is the curriculum section. So when you hover over the curriculum section, you get 2 subsections, curriculum and library. So there's a core set of curriculum which they keep changing. So they take out some videos or content, and there may be an article here, and they add some new content, right? So as you review them, you check and say that you've completed it. You can also skip it, but I would recommend not doing that. You just keep it there and come back to it at another time. As you've completed the core curriculum, then there is an extensive library that you should review. So depending on whatever you're looking at, you search the library in order to find out more information on that topic. And that could be all the way from how to find a co-founder, or about business models, like we were saying and we covered today, to your founder psychology, to fundraising, to managing people, product management, Series A. I think you get the gist of it, right? You can filter by category too, or you can just run a search. If you prefer media in a certain form, you can search for it. There's tons of content on the overall library. And this is one area that you should really, really leverage in order to learn more about entrepreneurship. Again, this resource is 100% free the way I understand it. So put it to use and learn from the people who have mentored some of the best startups in the world, including but not limited to Wufu, Kevin Hill. I love Kevin Hill. He's very dynamic, and I love how he presents ideas. Eric Michikovsky, founder of Pebble, a Canadian founder, that's right, from Waterloo, whose startup Pebble was one of the most successful crowdfunding campaigns in the history of Kickstarter, or I forget if it was Kickstarter or Indiegogo. But there's tons of other successes from YC itself, because YC was started by Paul Graham and Jessica, his wife. I think name is Jessica Livingstone. I could be wrong. And some of the other startups that have gone through the YC system are Dropbox, Stripe, Airbnb, Twitch TV, Justin TV. Justin TV, which got eventually got bought over by Amazon, turned to Twitch, the way I understand it. There's a long list of startups that have gone through and possibly are in the works, like going through the YC system. So I think right now, like because of startup school, a lot of startups are going through the system. So I would not comment on the application process. You don't have to apply to YC to do startup school. You can just do startup school and learn and apply. But there's tons of other things here. Also, you can connect with others. You can meet with others through the weekly updates. There's a forum for you to connect with. And if you complete the core set of curriculum, then you get deals. This thing only appears when you complete the core curriculum. I think you have to complete 10 out of 15 or something like that, which is what I did. And so this appears now. Then you get some Amazon, Google credits, and things like that. Okay, so great resource. Please put it to use. I would also like to mention my YouTube page. Obviously, it's not on the same caliber as YC because I don't have any material success to speak of. I don't do this on a full-time basis. I don't have an incubator. I just mostly talk about what has helped me, and my videos could be produced a lot better. But like I said, I just kind of fire up Zoom and start speaking about things from my experience, whether that's managing your psychology, some tips for early stage entrepreneurs, what you should be working on. Like one of the questions I get a lot on Quora. I don't know if the internet's back is, but what the question is, and I've mentioned this in my previous videos, one of the questions I get over and over again is, what should I do? And I keep saying that the problems are the opportunities. So focus on the problems. And I keep making use of data in order to be able to prove that that's where, like if you're looking for, like, yeah, I wouldn't talk too much about it, but like if you want to be a billionaire, solve a problem that impacts the lives of 1 billion people in a positive, equitable, just, fair, transparent manner, right? Solve that problem so that the lives of the people will get better and you make money. But I have other content here as well. Not all of it is going to be relevant to you, but if you search for keywords like entrepreneurship or startup or psych or psychology, then you'll come up with some answers. I would also like to highlight that I have 700 plus answers on Quora, almost 800 now, and in addition to possibility of life elsewhere in the universe and neuroscience and making life interplanetary, I've answered a lot of questions along the lines of entrepreneurship. So between my YouTube page and Quora, not so much my posts on LinkedIn, you will find hopefully educational content. But there's definitely tons of content for you to review through Startup School, read the books, apply the frameworks, and go from there. The last thing I want to mention is my diagram that I call the architectural foundations for enabling basics. And in a nutshell, this is a model that I started developing a number of years ago. The changelog only went in effect 2020, but I already had this document going prior to the year 2020, and I started developing this model because life happened without going into all the details. This was the foundation for me to create this system. This goes back 2015 at the very least. So it's been 7 years in the making, whereby I started measuring my life in spreadsheets. And I'm not doing everything that I have highlighted in this document, but this document is really about enabling your basics. Because when your basics are well taken care of, your energy levels are high, and you're focused on solving the thing in front of you. But if your basics are not taken care of, then everything suffers. So this is why I start with the foundation. I could move some stuff around, like it says an architectural foundation, but it's not in the right sequence, right? I guess you can look at it, but or you can look at it. Does it start here? Does it start here? Where does it start? I'm going to go through all of these one by one, but I won't talk about this in an exhaustive manner. My existing foundations include or comprise of, number one, or starting with the foundation, maintaining a positive mindset, a universally positive approach towards life. I would like to add to this that there is poison in our reality. There's no doubt about this. And the poison comes in different forms, including but not limited to racism, sexism, homophobia, xenophobia, transphobia, prejudice of different kinds, whatever the reason for those prejudices mean, because that's what the person saw in their environment. Maybe it's institutional or cultural, like transgender people being treated like a second-class person, or worse in a lot of parts of the world, or other examples like this. So this is, there's different forms of poison is what I'm saying. And a true leader has to work towards thinking independent thoughts. And you have to sit with different things in your mind. And you need to reason with what you're dealing with using first principles, humanism, ethics, and think about this independently using a variety of different means. I won't be able to go through this exhaustively. I'm not an expert in this area anyways. But if you let the poison get to you, then it will. And it's going to cause problems in your life. Because whatever kind of poison you let into your life is going to spread. In addition to that, not only will it spread and impact things in your life negatively, but it would also prevent you from enjoying possibly a very beautiful part of human construct. And this is a deeper, wider conversation about the human existence, possibly. But to avoid these kind of problems, you just have to treat people the way you want to be treated. And a big part of your focus should be towards changing yourself. And that is as succinctly that I can summarize how you shield and make yourself immune from the poison, whereby you then start taking the steps to nurture something beautiful inside of you in a truly universal sense of the word imaginable. So I spoke more on the negatives while talking about the positive mindset, but a big part of maintaining a positive mindset is to avoid the negativity, which means that you are responsible for the company you keep and the people you allow and let into your life. Because the people you let into your life, you are going to adopt their memes, their possibly their way of thinking and being in the world. And so the question is, why would you do that? So surround yourself with people who lift you up and encourage you to do better. Not necessarily materially, and there's nothing wrong with that. If you want to do that, that's great. But develop your character. Nurture something beautiful inside of you. Take ownership of your own well-being, because that's how you will invest towards maintaining a positive mindset. Okay? And remember, positive thoughts create healing in the mind, possibly the body. That's not medical advice. And negative thoughts create damage and possibly disease of the mind and the body. This again is not clinical advice. None of what I say is clinical or medical advice. But there are some, at least Dr. Joe Dispenza says that positive thoughts can do that and negative thoughts can do to the contrary. So lean in and really listen to your body and your mind about how certain things make you feel. Okay? Sometimes you're wrong. Sometimes you're wrong. Sometimes you're wrong. Like, somebody could have a gay person around them and they're like, this gay person is making me feel queasy or something like that. There's no evidence of anything like that. It's probably your own tendencies that you're suppressing that makes you feel that way. And that's I'm like, this is going very off topic, but I just want to bring out a nuanced example because I possibly see this as a big problem in our collective human psyche, whereby we may suppress some part of our own psyche, and then the actual thing we're suppressing, we do a finger pointing thing and say, oh, this problem is in somebody else. But the problem is it's not with somebody else. It's something we are suppressing as part of our own psyche. And the alternative to that is also true. When we see something good inside of us, when you see something good in us, it also means that goodness is also inside of us. Okay? The next one is delayed gratification. There was an actual experiment conducted at Stanford. It's called the Stanford Marshmallow Test. You can Google this. There's a video of Dr. Michikoku also talking about this. And I think Dr. Michikoku highlights that this could possibly be more important than the IQ test. Now, if somebody does fail the marshmallow test, not all hope is lost. Because neuroplasticity. Okay? Again, none of what I say is medical advice, but neuroplasticity does seem to work. So if you're struggling with delayed gratification, I don't know what the example would be on experiment. I wouldn't do a marshmallow test, by the way, when I've been fasting for 2 days. Okay? So within reason. But you can try going and extending that gratification, extending it by a minute, then 2 minutes, then 5 minutes, then kind of go from there. Measure the outcome that you seek. But in general, you want to structure your day so that you are doing cycles of deep work, eating healthy food when you need to, and generally delaying the gratification. It's not just about food. It's about a lot of other things. Stimuli, relationships, habits, a lot of other things, right? But you need to delay the gratification in the different areas for you to be able to hit your goals. Okay, I won't talk too much about this because the videos become a little longer. I'm getting a little tired also. Now I gotta go for a walk. So the next one is the foundations, or I call the 4 pillars. And I wanted to move resiliency here as a 5th pillar. But regular sleep, regular exercise, quality nutrition, and wholesome relationships, professional and personal, is the absolute bedrock of your well-being. I won't, again, won't have the time to do justice and talk about each one of these today. But please, please, please focus on these. I gotta focus on these too. I was doing pretty good up until last year, and now everything is, basically I gotta work on this. Okay? I already spoke about this when I was talking about deep work, so hopefully people were paying attention. Okay? I made a couple of distinctions regarding deep work, and I mentioned you gotta take breaks. Okay? I mentioned that you gotta bake relaxation into your day-to-day routine that I spoke about. Leisure! Were you paying attention? I hope you were. I already spoke about this. Measurement and measuring the positive outcome that you seek, measuring your life in spreadsheets, and creating the systems that serve you. I'm not going to be able to share this in detail, but I've shared some of the data with regards to the good, the bad, and the ugly from this on my public page on YouTube. And in particular, you can get a sense of this in, I gotta stop shaking my leg because it's making a noise. This one. Be kind to yourself, measure the positive outcome that you seek. So this one not just contains information from my morning routine, but it also contains some other data with regards to, there was a corollary to mental health and wasteful activities. So I won't share all the data, but I shared the graphs, and hopefully that's not sharing too much on the internet. But the reason why I did that is because measurement matters. And if you're trying to improve something, then you need to take the set of actions that's going to bring healing and positivity, or like a breakthrough that you're looking for. But if you want to manage it, and like Peter Drucker would say, you need to measure it. And that is why I put measurement as a pivotal step, and as it relates to enabling the basics of that architectural the foundation for you. The next one is lifelong learning, as well in identifying your strengths and continually developing your skills. I won't be able to do justice here, just in the interest of time, but anyone who's worked with me knows that I'm big on Gallup's Strength Finder, and I try to either gift it to you or get you to do that, and then I share my own personal strengths with you by Gallup. Lifelong learning, you do it through a variety of different means. If you can't afford to pay for courses and upgrading yourself in different domains, you can always read a book. If you can't buy a book, you can always go to the library and borrow a book. And that's exactly what I've been doing for the past 23 years. And in the 23 years of my 23 years as a Canadian, I've paid probably $150 to $200 in library fines. And those $200, $150, for $150, I gave myself a lifelong education. So that's it. I cannot emphasize how amazing of an institution a library can be. And if you are a person of financial well-being, or uh, or if you have time, then you should, working my way backwards in reverse order, you should look at volunteering at the library. And if you are of financial well-being, you should look into supporting a library by donating funds towards the sustenance of the library. Because a book is something that should be not just a book, any media, any source of knowledge, a resource. It's better when it's shared with others, because when it just sits in your bookshelf, it collects dust unless you've got your notes on it and whatnot. But it's good to share, and it's important to share knowledge. Civilizations thrive because we share knowledge with each other within reason. Within reason, there has to be a system via which we protect the outliers and the innovators, and that the hard work of the innovators is protected through a legal structure, which we refer to as intellectual property, and the wider patent system of that. But 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 when it comes to general knowledge, particularly knowledge that we've had for hundreds of years, if not thousands of years, going back to the Greeks, going back to other civilizations, matters of scientific inquiry, in a modern sense too, past Galileo, which is plus minus 400 years, I would think. Greeks going back at least 2,500 years, plus minus. In other civilizations, like I said, there's enormous amount of learnings in the area of ethics, philosophy, life, mathematics, science, so many different subjects. And the library serves as a great resource where not just information, or sorry, knowledge is protected and shared, but also as a conduit or an institution for nurturing the minds of the citizen or citizens. And if you look at the wealth of civilizations, there are a couple of core pillars for a civilization. Just like we're talking about some of the pillars for your well-being. And the pillars for civilization, I don't have an exhaustive list, but I have a diagram which I started putting together at some point. I haven't. There's a couple of documents here. One is a future scenario planning board on Miro, which anyone is welcome to collaborate with me and build up on that. The other one is a simple diagram that I started thinking about one day, and I haven't had a chance to update that to the degree that I've updated the future scenario planning. But it's a simple kind of thought experiment with regards to the basic systems or institutions and values that are required in order to be able to take civilization to a continually enlightened and better state, with a focus on ethics, justice, upward mobility, focusing on the economic well-being and development of the system, scientific development, because science truly is the engine of prosperity, and you need a prosperous nation and an emerging or developing middle class so that people have the affordance of being able to dedicate their time towards pursuing interests of their choice, them and their children, of learning about science, math, philosophy, ethics, and a variety of other subjects, social sciences, arts, history, you get the point. And so I want to be talking about that topic, and it's not starting to become a little off topic. But to come back to the architectural foundations for enabling the basics and the kind of like talking about the library and civilization, the other ones are, I combine a bunch together: resiliency, conviction in yourself, enabling the right mindset, deep work. I spoke about deep work here. Investing in your mental health by talking to a trained, evidence-based practitioner on a regular basis. I'm going to move ahead in the interest of time. The environment plays a big factor. So the physical environment, the relationships, you really are the product of the people you spend the most time with. Thoughts become reality. So please, please, please choose your peers and people you spend your time with very carefully. If you have to be alone for an extended time period, be alone, then to make a trade-off and be with shitty people. I mean, I'm sorry I'm using that word, but you cannot change other people. You should be sympathetic and share a book with somebody or some link or some resource that's going to allow them to get to the breakthrough that you feel they need. And I'm not talking to I'm not talking about converting somebody to your belief system uh, or to the contrary. If you feel that that could be of use to them or benefit them, then you can. But don't make it your life's mission to convert people. But things like well-being, like how to win friends and influence people, right? Or maybe somebody has to lose some weight. Then you could share, a simple recommendation with them. Have you tried talking to a nutritionist, or have you read this book on, why don't you talk to your doctor about this book, right? So simple suggestions like that. Don't try to over-engineer it, particularly if somebody doesn't want that, right? You got to gauge their interest, and you got to be really, really mindful that you may not be trained to give advice regarding that matter. So something to be conscientious about. But be very conscious of who you're spending time with, because you will become the sum total of the people you spend the most time with. The next one is designing your life with conscious intent and consistent effort. Measurable SMART goals stands for specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and timely. And yes, so I'm not going to speak about that right now. And the top, we have Servant Leadership by Dr. Wayne Dyer. So this today is the summary of what I wanted to share with some of my friends and acquaintances and whoever may be watching this in the future. Please, 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 please do not spend big bucks learning how to be an entrepreneur or change maker. Educate yourself, okay? Start with the resources that I mentioned. Educate yourself on the basics. Buy the books. Invest in the right mindset. Use different stories and strategies in order to get to the state change you want. Do deep work. When it comes to things on the entrepreneurial side of things, launch something. Don't think about the perfect system and spend the next 10 years making something, and meanwhile the market has totally changed. You wanted to build a SaaS product, but in 10 years there's going to be a cluster of computers and everything's going to be running on top of blockchains. You see my point. That's just one of the many examples. You gotta start with what you got, and you gotta launch, and then you gotta use a structured process of turning your faith-based endeavor, not in a religious sense necessarily, into a fact-finding mission. Okay? So listen to the people who've been there, who have started companies and sold them like worth tens, if not hundreds of millions of dollars, and learn from what they have to teach, and use a structured method and mechanism in order to be able to take your idea to the next level, because you will pivot. And just like it's really hard to navigate a terrain without a map and a compass, the same thing with business or startups. There are tools and models and frameworks that you should deploy. As you are doing that, you're not going to go alone. I highly, highly, highly recommend against doing so. I highly, highly, highly do recommend going with others, tackling things in team-based format. And as you do that, you're going to need people around you who support you, you support them, and you lift each other up. And basically, positive energy and win-win situations. And the book that I cannot recommend enough is How to Win Friends and Influence People, which I've already spoken about. Do take a look at my YouTube page. Take a look at some of my answers on Quora. Quora in particular, I wish I had time to go back and edit some of my answers again, but it's not uncommon for me to spend 1 hour per post, or 30 minutes or 40 minutes per post. There's still some typos. You can sort by all-time views. I don't know if you get this view also, but some of my answers have gotten thousands of views. Not to sound all that. This is my best answer so far. 116 people like it to date, and yes, the other ones, I talk about a bunch of different things. So take a look at that, and take a look at my architectural foundations for enabling the basics. This is my talk for the day. Hopefully this was useful. There's a couple of people I'm thinking of that could really benefit from this video, because I know you have spent or thinking about spending money, big money, to go to another part of the world so that you can get the entrepreneurial stamp. And what you want to do is become more disciplined and focused. Okay? And what you want to do is you want to do deep work, right? And that's how good things happen, right? There's another talk too with regards to technology trends, which I'm not going to talk about today, because I feel like that should be part of the timing process. Because if you look at folks like Bill Gross, who have actually studied thousands of startups, at least hundreds of startups, in order to find out what makes startups tick or go, and why they fail also, then one of the things that they have noticed at the Idea Lab, I think it's called Idea Lab or Ideo Lab. I always mix them up because one is from Stanford and the other one is from somewhere else. Or actually, sorry, one of them is Bill Gross's and the other one is from Stanford's D School. Or maybe it's both the same. But anyhow, so timing is so key and pivotal. And for you to time a startup, you must be mindful of the technological trends that are happening. So I won't be able to talk about that today, but this is my video of, hopefully this was of some use to you. If it was, find me on LinkedIn and let me know what's up. And this is my profile. And right now I didn't have internet, so I'm going to refresh that. And you will see some personal messages. Actually, here's my, it's, hold on, jeez. Linked, I can type LinkedIn. And that's the link to my profile, Adil Khan 1. Okay, so find me on LinkedIn. If you're trying to search for me, search for Adil Khan Awake. It's gonna come up. Message me there. But otherwise, hopefully this was again of some good use to you. Be well. Bye for now.